Hi there, everybody. My name is Shanpreet Sanan, and I'll be giving you a quick rundown on approaches to each MCAT section and how to improve your score in each section more efficiently. I already did a video on how to prepare for the MCAT in general and what resources there are, so this video is just going to kind of assume that you do have where you're getting your information from, and now you're just kind of looking on how to improve your score and a little bit of a breakdown on each section and what to expect. If you haven't seen that video, you can definitely check it out. It should be on this channel called MCAT 101 with Sean Sonnen. For a general overview on the test, there are four sections: Chem Phys, Critical Analysis and Reasoning, otherwise known as CARS, Bio and Biochem, BB, and Psych Soc, PS. Now, the three sections that aren't CARS are all 95 minutes and 59 questions, whereas CARS is 90 minutes and 53 questions, a little bit shorter. And we'll get into that one and how it's kind of unique in a little bit here. There's 230 questions in total, and frankly, not that much time. So the name of the game here is really going to be trying to get through this quick and making sure you know what each question is asking of you and what you need to know for each question. Now, the score ranges per section don't really allow for a whole lot of a margin for error if you're really trying to go for a very competitive score. The MCAT is scored up to 528. A 515 or above would be a 90th percentile score, which means that you can only really miss about 13 total points on the MCAT. That's not questions, that's points, which is an important distinction that I'll kind of show here. Your raw score is shown over on the left with the scaled score, the points that I'm talking about in the middle, and the percentile rank on the right. So really, out of 59 questions, you want to be getting about 52 right if you're trying to score in the 95th percentile, more like 55. And as you just get up, that margin for error cuts even narrower and even narrower. So you really do have to kind of know what kind of margin for error you have here so you know how hard you're going to have to go at it. Before I get into this, also, note taking is extremely important in this. And I'm just going to cover it a little bit up front so that you know what I'm talking about when I reference it later. Note taking really helps you kind of digest these passages. Most of them are going to be dense scientific literature, especially in chem phys and biochem. And so you want to really be able to note down the specific info that you're looking for so that you can reference it pretty easily, specific figures or numbers you really want to have on hand. It also helps you just kind of organize the ideas. Sometimes these ideas are going to get all over the place. They are complicated. This is hard stuff. So it just helps you organize those ideas too. If you're having some difficulty understanding them, you know, I'm sure at least one passage will make you read something a second time at least once, and that's kind of where the note taking is going to come in. There's a whole lot of ways to do this, and it's definitely not one size fits all, as you're going to find out a lot of the MCAT is. So I'm really going to emphasize do what works for you. I'm just going to kind of throw out a couple ways that I know people have done it and that people like. Some people will make a little T structure and then they'll throw up main information on the left side, like big terms, for example, an enzyme name, and then smaller, I guess less important, but still descriptor information for it on the right side. That helps people keep ideas organized. Some people like to go and then abbreviate their enzymes and almost write a little like one sentence per passage, and that just leaves you a little story almost. Kind of you just get a summary of each paragraph, so you can reference that really easily. You're like, oh, that was from the third paragraph. Let me read what my notes were on that. So that really helps. Some people really like putting a symbol next to important information, like a star for important information, and then maybe like they have a key to themselves. Like if they circle information, it's an enzyme, or if they underline information, it's a substrate. Things like that. Again, all just little tips that you can personalize for yourself, but that really do help you just hone in on that info quick, save you some time. Really, seconds count. Underlining and highlighting, an obvious one that people really like. Some people just want to know key findings, and that works too. You know, it's whatever works for you. But I really do think as you're delving into this, one, before you really like go into content, take a look at that because it'll really tell you how you're piecing together things logically. And so try out a couple different note-taking strategies and see which one works best with your logic, just purely like that. And then also after you've done a little bit of content review, go back in and make sure it works after you've done content review and it's feasible for incorporating the large amount of information you now have and background information you now have on these topics. First off, more than anything, just take your classes seriously. If you're watching this early on in college, just take your classes seriously. I'm so glad I did. I know so many people who didn't, and the MCAT was a much rougher process for them. Um, if you know the things on the MCAT before going into studying for the MCAT, but you just haven't really refreshed them, the studying process is much easier. There's much less content that you have to fully novelly learn, and so that helps you a lot. I mean, organic chemistry. So many people try to cheese through organic chemistry. They don't want to put in the work and really lock in and understand it. Well, guess what? It's gonna hurt you here. Organic chemistry is a big part of the MCAT. You're gonna need to know it. Biochemistry, same thing. So really do take your classes seriously. These pre-med requisites, they're gonna show up on your MCAT. They're gonna show up in med school. So you need to know your stuff. Um, Now, starting off with Chem Phys, like I said, 59 questions, 95 minutes. There's 10 passages, uh, and 44 of the questions are based on that with a range of 4 to 7 questions per passage. There's also 15 discrete questions. Now, these discrete questions are going to be largely do you know it or do you don't? So that's going to come from your content review. You're just going to need to know that going in, and you might be able to piece it together with some logic, and some of them might even expect you to piece it together with some logic. So, be prepared for that. Be prepared to try and analyze some word roots, and figure it out. But overall, those discrete questions are largely do you have it or do you don't? Uh, do you not? And so look at it like that. Don't waste too much time on those. But if you do think maybe I do have this in the back of my head, star it, come back to it. Always a good move. Um, as far as what's on the Chem Phys section, there's a whole lot of stuff. You got some biochem in there, some bio, mostly chemistry and physics, though. You'll see 30% of chemistry, 15 organic chem, 25% physics. And this can lead to some pretty gnarly combos. People do not love this section, although no one really loves any section. Um, Timing is key here. Timing is key in every section. So I'm just going to keep saying it over and over and over again. Approaches vary by person. No size fits all. Some people want more time to read. Some people want more time to analyze the questions. Um, so you really got to figure out which one you are. I love having the time to read. I think once I get to the question, it's not too bad. I can really break down questions pretty easily. That's something that works well for me. So I just wanted to take more time, understand the passage more thoroughly, and that way I can see if like, okay, is there conflicting information or in my mind, is there conflicting information? How do I resolve this? There's never going to really be conflicting information. These are scientific passages, but if you have something wrong in your head and you read this passage and you're like, okay, wait, that doesn't align with what I know, then that gives you a little bit of time to work that out. Um, Alternatively, the approach to take more time per question really does help a lot of people get out of the traps and pitfalls that people put in MCAT questions. They are oftentimes designed to trick you. This test is working against you, and you do need a little bit of time to look at those. So again, you really want to balance that. For me, what worked was 5 minutes per passage, 45 seconds per question. That really helped me out personally, but that also came with a little bit of fiddling. I tried out my timing. I even was adjusting my timing and my note taking in my last month before the MCAT while I was just taking questions. I was really locking in on how exactly I like to do this. So really great strategy there. Um, to try and mess with your timing. If you're not doing that, I really think you're missing out. Um, Other notes for Chem Phys, always look at your figures first. Your figures are so easy to digest. Scientific papers are made to make figures easy to digest. You just look at it, you get it. I mean, you ask a grad student, they'll say the same thing. Everybody loves just looking at a figure real quick, analyzing that, and then delving in because then you know your key points, you know what you're looking for, you have an idea, especially if you are well familiarized with the topic, with the subject matter, then you can look at it, you can look at the figure and you can be like, okay, this enzyme, right? What am I looking for? I'm looking for binding methods. I'm looking for substrates. I'm looking for binding efficiency, like all common things that people are going to test on the MCAT. That's kind of the connections you need to start drawing. But you can get all that from the figure. Such a great way to digest information initially. Um, After that, scroll back up to the top and start highlighting key terms. Do your note taking, whatever method you like, and just while you're doing all that, keep in mind the kind of questions the MCAT likes. This is going to be really important in every section again. Really just want to know what the MCAT's going to test for. What kind of stuff do they like asking about enzymes? Like I was saying, they really like that. Binding efficiency, that's a common one. Methods of binding, another common one. So, you know, just try and keep that familiarity in mind when you're going through the passage. You see substrate, circle it. All just general, generally building an idea of what this test wants from you is going to help you a lot here. Um, how to improve your score in this section specifically, hone in on content. There's so much content in ChemPhys, not as much as some other sections, but there's plenty. And so you really want to make sure you have your content on lock. You want to know your interactions, like I'll talk about for chemistry. You want to know, for example, like when nucleophilic attack would happen, what situations are prime for nucleophilic or electrophilic attack, common bases, common acids, strong bases, strong acids, weak of each, what makes a weak acid a weak acid, why is a weak acid a weak acid, why is a strong acid a strong acid, how do they interact, what kind of interaction or equation am I looking at, all this kind of stuff. Got to know it. Back of your hand. It should just be second nature. When you look at this, you're analyzing it. So you really want to learn those interactions and how to break down those questions. Really important for chemistry. Um, Again, learn the typical questions, like I said. Practice reading and then explaining info. That's a really great way to do this. There's a million scientific papers on the internet. If you're in college, you can access them, probably. Just do it. Go read a paper. It sucks. I know. It's hard. The reason it's hard is because you're probably not that great at it yet. It's a learned skill. You should really, really practice it in that way. It really helps you just cold read some papers, read it and then explain it. Make sure you've digested it. Practice your note taking as you read it. Pick a short communication and that'll, help you get a more MCAT sized bite, or pick a longer one and really just lock down. Practice. Most of all, practice under time. Like I said, timing's so important. Practice under it. It's going to make all the difference on test day. I promise you. The stress, the moment, it's there. It's present. And some people can shine in it. Some people it's harder for. So really practice under the test day conditions, because either way, that's just going to improve your score. For physics, my keys, takeaways are know the equations. So many people go in and they're like, oh yeah, I was writing down my equations in that tutorial period beforehand where you can take notes super quick. Why? Why were you doing that? You should know them. You're here. You're paying hundreds of dollars for a test. No, it's so easy. It's a basic step. I think it's honestly one of the first steps you should take if you're attacking physics. Know every equation, know them in and out, know where each equation is useful, know when you can actually substitute equations, know when a little trick works instead of an equation. All that stuff back in your hand. You should be looking at a problem and immediately identifying how you're going to attack it. If you can't immediately identify how to attack it, then slow down. People get so caught up so quickly. They look at it, they freak out. Slow it down. Break down a free body diagram even helps so much of the time, just to understand what forces are acting on an object. What do I need to consider step by step, and then slow it down. But slow it down when you have the time to, and keep your timing in mind. Come back to the question if you need, because again, timing is king. You don't want to fall off your timing. You don't want to lose low-hanging fruit on a hard question. They're sprinkled all throughout. If you've noticed there's something that you're really just going to lose time on, learn how to kind of make that choice in your mind. Yeah, this is going to be a come back to it question, you know. Into cars. Let's take a deep breath. Cars is hard. Cars is really hard. It's a section that really relies on your intuition. It's almost all reading comprehension. They're going to be dense passages. They're going to be more literature based rather than scientific papers, and they might have some science around them, but it's not nearly as scientifically dense as the other ones. This one's going to be a lot of what students maybe haven't seen. It's going to be reading comprehension, critical thinking skills, and abilities to infer assumptions about authors and tone in ways a lot of pre-med students haven't. So it's going to be the hardest to improve in by far because you're working on your reading comprehension and pretty much exclusively that, as well as your critical thinking. But it's still possible. A lot of people see big score jumps in cars. You just have to buckle up and know that you're in for it because this is easily the hardest section to improve in. If you notice you have a problem with cars, you need to start practicing early and often. Take a diagnostic early on. See where all your sections are and see, hey, do I need to focus on cars? If you don't need to focus on cars, that's awesome. It's so difficult to improve in cars, as so many people have told me. But if you have it down already, that's great. If you don't, practice is the name of the game. It's how you improve in cars. You're going to need to practice under time, especially because this is a time sensitive section. A lot of people run out of time on cars. It's one of the hardest sections to keep on time for. Um, you'll have to make judgment based decisions, and that really pulls on people's time a lot of the time. Some people are going to need more time for reading. Some people are going to need less time for questions. Again, it's a find your rhythm moment, but it's so important here. It's so important here to be on time because once you're flustered, you're out. It's done. Really need to stay on track. If you don't stay on track, then you need to adapt. A good example on this is you can take 4 minutes per passage, 1 minute per question. That's what I liked doing. I liked the passage heavy side of it. Really let me absorb the information. I think that's especially important with these like literary sources in a sense. But again, please play with it. Don't use my timing. Maybe use it as a base, but don't stick with it. Don't be attached to it. It's not a be all end all at all whatsoever. Um, there's a couple drills you can use for cars that I really liked when I was starting out. Speed is a great one. You go through the passage, you stick to whatever your goal time is. You don't need to be reading at your goal time already. That's not realistic, but you need to set your goal time and you need to stop it once you're at your goal time and then just start trying to answer questions. And I know it's going to feel like you're wasting questions. It sucks. It's going to force you to get through the passage quicker, is what it's going to do. It's going to force you to push. All right, let's say my goal time is 4 minutes. I am currently reading a passage at 6 minutes. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes 30. At 5 minutes 30, I'm stopping. I'm watching that timer. I'm reading that passage quicker. And if I have to skim at the end, I'm skimming at the end, but I'm getting it all out and then I'm practicing what I can do with that information on the questions. And then once I can successfully read a passage at 5:30 and do well, I'm moving that time down to 5:15, 5 minutes, so on and so forth until you get to your target time. That's really how you bring your time down. Great method to do so. And again, really important method to employ. The other drill, comprehension. Great drill. Sit there, read the whole passage as long as it takes you. Really make sure you understand it. Then flip it over. You don't want to look back at it. You want to summarize the passage and then take all the questions. Another way to do it is instead of flipping it over, just take all the questions after and see how well you do and see how long that takes you and just practice your note taking and your general other strategies there aside from timing. This is the only scenario where I will ever say don't practice under time. It's the only one. It's the only one, and it's so that you really are understanding what's in every single passage, and that's it. That's the only time I ever want it, ever. Again, start practicing early and often on cars. You need to get in on this quick because there's really nothing that is going to help you here besides practice and time. Sleep, get those neural networks flowing, get that locked in. You need days of practice. That's just how you do it. This is a skill. It's not something you can just memorize on Anki. Read more in general. It really does help. I have a lot of friends who had a really rough time with this. They just started reading more in general, read some philosophy. It's great. It's you read Western philosophy. It's pretty densely packed stuff. Read some Nietzsche, read some Kant. Um, it's good stuff. They love testing on Nietzsche and Kant. I've read a Nietzsche and Kant passage before. It was honestly kind of fun to know what they had going in. Despite this, please never pull from outside knowledge. It killed me to read philosophers that I knew and not say, hey, this is what they believe because I knew what they believed, but instead to go off what is in the passage. But when the MCAT test taker or test designers are writing that test, they're writing it thinking you only have the info in that passage. They don't expect you to have read Kant. They don't expect you to have read Aristotle. So just sit there, really lock in on what you have as information and use that as your only source material. The CARS diagnostic tool is a great tool here. It's a new tool, so not a lot of people have really been like, oh, wow, this is the tool of the century, or it's not, you know. The verdict's a little bit out, but it seems to be pretty good. It'll help kind of hone you in on cars. It's made by the AAMC, which is awesome. Again, all of their content is the gold standard. You should really just be using all of it. Um, some notes for how to attack this. I always really thought considering the author, their purpose, and their tone was really helpful. You know, go back to English class. That's the most important stuff you're going to see. Take that first sentence into account, take that last sentence into account. You know, I mean, all that is really going to feed into your general understanding of the passage. And the MCAT loves to ask about tone. Love, they love to ask about tone. So really lock in on it because it's it's a really important aspect of understanding what's happening in the passage. Also, adjust your note-taking strategies. If they're not working for like the typical strategies you use in Chem Phys or BB, then try something else for cars. Cars really can sometimes use a better, different note-taking strategy. If you take notes from each paragraph, like a quick sentence from each paragraph, that's actually most useful, I feel, here in Psych Soc. That's a personal anecdote, but that's what I found to be very helpful. And I think a lot of others found that as well because cars, again, it's more literary, it's more like a story. So build that little story, you know, build a key takeaway from each passage. Whereas in Chem Phys and BB, you're more trying to build an idea overall. Um, I do feel that's also useful in Psych Soc, but I'll get into that in a sec. Getting into bio and biochem. All right, hopefully our bread and butter, guys. 59 questions, 95 minutes, 44 passage spaced, 10 passages, 4 to 7 questions each, 15 discretes, just like you're looking at on Chem Phys. This one, you'll see again, much more bio and biochem. 25% biochem, 65% bio. Chem and OChem, 5 and 5. So again, these are all pretty heavily going to skew you towards the biochem side. You're going to be looking at a lot of pathways. You're going to be looking at a lot of enzymes. You're going to be looking at a lot of, you know, glycolysis, photosynthesis, the likes. And there's a lot of content here. There's a lot of content here, as you would expect with bio. And if you don't know the content, it's going to hurt you pretty bad. So your content review is going to be pretty important, especially in like chem phys and biochem, because you need that background, especially in biochem and bio. Timing, probably going to look similar to Chem Phys. This is the most similar to Chem Phys. I feel like I kind of group them like that. Like this is bio and biochem and Chem Phys are very similar. Psych Soc is kind of like the baby of those two, and cars, and then cars is the other side of the spectrum where it's almost all intuition. Um, so yeah, I just kind of threw the same uh, timing because that's the timing I used in here as for Chem Phys. And again, you guys feel free to adjust it. Some people really like actually taking longer in the questions for Chem Phys as opposed to biochem. So, you know, also keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be the same. Again, no size fits all. Just figure out what works for you. Some people really like the time in Chem Phys because they want to do calculations, whereas in biochem, it's more about getting the understanding of the pathway and then just getting into it. Um, Look at your figures first. Again, figures are so important. Scientists love them. There's a reason. Take notes in a structured way, um, or highlight your key terms. You know, again, these notes are going to be important. Really important here. You're looking at pathways. You're going to be able to want to like trace your logic down. So, however you take your notes, I really liked actually drawing out some pathways for this on the side, as well as my normal note taking. So again, depends per person. That takes a little bit more time. If you're willing to sacrifice the time, I was, you know, I saw it improving my score, test it out. If it doesn't work, go back. Um, Again, here, learning the MCAT as well as the content, super important. You just want to know what the test is going to expect from you. It's going to help you take notes. It's going to help you analyze the passage better. You're not going to read all the extraneous stuff. You're going to read what you need to know. How to improve your score. Very similar to Chem Phys again. Hone in on that content. Content is going to be really important here. If you don't know the sections of the brain, you're not going to know which section lights up when something happens. And that can be bio or that can be psych soc. I mean, there's a little bit of overlap there. So things like that, hone in on content. Learn the typical questions, like I said. Practice reading and then explaining the info. Like I said, again, all scientific papers, dense scientific papers. If you want to learn how to practice or how to analyze a scientific paper, where else do you go? Practice under time, really important here. This one can be pretty time constraining. There's some big words, a lot of ideas flowing around, a lot of pathways, a lot of this involves this and also this, and there's an inducer here and a repressor here. So you want to have a pretty good handle on what you're doing and when you're doing it so that you're practicing under, you know, the conditions you're going to be testing under. Learn your terms, learn your word roots, all very important. So helpful for piecing together stuff. The MCAT's going to ask you a lot of questions that it knows you don't know. It's going to ask you a term that it knows you don't know. It'll happen. It just will. They have all of science to pull on. You don't have all of science to know. So when they do that, you want to stay calm and analyze your way out of it. And the best way to do that is with word roots. It's so easy once you learn the word roots. You just piece Latin together. I mean, it's glycolysis, right? Glycogen breakdown. It's so helpful. Learn the pathways like glycolysis and photosynthesis, all that, cellular respiration, lactic acid cycle, everything on that side, know it in and out, know it backwards and forwards, know what the structures look like, know what each step does, know the enzymes. It's so helpful. Even if the MCAT doesn't necessarily say it will test on every single enzyme, it's useful to know them because likelier than not, it'll still pop up in the passage. And now you know it, as opposed to having to read it and piece it all together. A lot of this is familiarity. Even if you don't necessarily need to know it, it's helpful. So, attack things like the lac operon. The lac operon is the classic example of inducers and repressors in gene transcription and translation. And so it's fantastic to know the lac operon in and out because I mean, one, it's just useful for your classes. Like I said, be good in your classes, you'll be good on the MCAT. And two, it's probably gonna appear in at least your MCAT studying. It's a pretty high yield concept. So yeah. And then the last one, focus on your high yield content. That applies everywhere, but applies especially so here in Psych Soc. There's a lot of content that's high yield. There's a lot of random content. Make sure you know your high yield content in and out. It's just going to serve you better. I mean, obviously you want to know everything you can, but focus on that. Psych Soc, this is our last section. This is kind of where everything else fits in. You'll see there's a big part of psych and soc in there, just a tiny little bit of biology, and the same breakdown as Chem Phys and BB with 10 passages and 15 discretes. You're going to see a lot of random terms here. McDonaldization, that's a testable term. Look it up. It's hilarious, but it's in there. And so, that just kind of gives you an idea of how much random stuff there is in Psych Soc. There is just about everything random you can imagine. And it's going to take a little bit of intuition to piece that together. But simultaneously, you do need the content to piece that together too. You need to know what you need to know to piece together what you don't know. Psych Soc is a changing game, like I said. It kind of used to be very similar to BB and CP in that it was very content heavy. It's kind of becoming more intuition based and more like cars, which can benefit some people who really do well on cars. I feel it definitely benefited me because I had a decent hold on cars and I can definitely attest to a lot of the newer stuff definitely feels a little bit more intuition based. But again, that's anecdotal. It's anecdotal from a number of people who are taking the MCAT. You check the MCAT Reddit, a lot of people talking about it, but could be all talk. It's definitely my feel on it though. The timing on PsychSoc will likely look like a mix between your CARS timing and your CPPB timing. Mine was 3.5 minutes per passage, one per question. On your timing, by the way, leave a little time at the end. Leave a little wiggle room in your time. Leave an extra minute or two, maybe even five. This gives you a little bit of wiggle room, not much though, but yeah, leaving a little bit of wiggle room definitely important. Again, taking your notes in a structured way, highlighting key terms, that's going to be important here, and learning your testing styles and question pitfalls is going to be really important here. Like I said, intuition based, so they're going to try and catch you a little, and if you know the pitfalls, then you know how to avoid them. So much content here. Like I said, always room to brush up on more. The Miles Down deck, great deck to look at for Anki decks to just keep churning through information. There's so much information in there, and it's pretty comprehensive. So yeah, it's a great deck to look at if you guys aren't already looking at it. That's the one I use personally. Learn to infer what you don't know. Like I said, inferring is very important, but those Latin roots in BB. Inferring what you don't know is important here too. PsychSoc, it's a little bit of just understanding things and rationalizing certain things. I mean, it's a very um, very easy section to just kind of think through rationally if you have the terms and you have the general gist of it. So learn to infer what you don't know. Learn enough so that you can infer. Practice under time constraints. In my opinion, this is the easiest for timing. But some people have a harder time, and actually on test day, if I'm going to be honest, I had a hard time on timing for this section, which is definitely very odd considering I was ending with a free 10, maybe even 20 minutes sometimes on PsychSoc. So yeah, practice is more important here than in ChemPhys or BB. I feel like because of that and because of that intuition kind of aspect about it, just like cars, it's a big part of how you improve. But practice is the name of the game on all of them. So please don't take that as an excuse to not study Chem Phys or BB or not do a Chem Phys or BB passage. Never do that. This is not a free reign to do that at all. Don't take it as that. It's just this section, I think, is more dependent on practice than those. But practice is the name of the game in this whole process. Um, and like I said, note taking with notes from each paragraph is really useful here because, like I said, a lot of the studies that you're going to read for this section are kind of you can intuit the direction they're going to go. And so if you take notes on each paragraph and kind of line it up like a story, it again makes pretty decent sense. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you very much and stay calm and push on. The mental battle really is half of it. I'm not kidding. It's so hard to push through. And if you're here, you're studying for the MCAT, pat yourself on the back. It's a hard process and good luck keeping on going.